That week, I thought I was just sharing a room with my cousin. Simple, harmless. We were family. What could possibly go wrong? But nothing could have prepared me for the look in his eyes that night. Or what happened when he caught me like that. I should have been embarrassed. I should have pushed him away, but I didn't want him to stop. It all started when my mom told me Alex was coming to stay. She made it sound casual, like it wouldn't affect me at all. Just a few days, she said over the phone. His uni is closed for renovations and your aunt's traveling. It'll be easier if he stays with us until things settle. I didn't even get a say in it. By the time I got home from campus that Friday, his duffel bag was already in the hallway. His spotless size 13 sneakers were parked by the stairs, like they'd always been there. I hadn't seen Alex in almost a year and a half, not since that awkward family reunion where he barely looked up from his phone while I pretended to care about Aunt Sima's photo albums. Technically, we were cousins, but not the kind who grew up building forts or getting into trouble together. He was a year and a half older, always orbiting somewhere else, confident, popular, surrounded by people who laughed a little too hard at his jokes. So imagine my surprise when I opened the door, sweaty from the bus ride, and found him sprawled on the living room couch like he owned the place. "Hey, Asher," he said with that trademark lopsided grin, arms tucked behind his head like some toothpasted model. "Miss me?" I rolled my eyes. Didn't know I was supposed to. He just laughed. "Come on, man. Don't be like that. Roomies for the week. It'll be fun. Roommates? Great. I wasn't used to sharing my space. I liked my quiet, my moody playlists, my routine, uninterrupted. Alex brought noise, music thumping through the walls, loud calls with friends I didn't know, a gym bag that somehow smelled like coconut and sweat. The first night was fine, barely, because he stayed in the guest room and I stayed in mine. But even then, I could hear him talking to himself while gaming, laughing at his own TikToks, singing along to whatever pop song he had on loop. Still, something about him felt different this time. Something I didn't remember from before. Maybe it was the way he looked, taller, more filled out. His features had sharpened into something magnetic. His hair, longer now, styled in that effortless way that probably took real effort. And his smile. It did something to my stomach I didn't want to admit. I tried to ignore it. I really did, but then came the little things. When he brushed past me in the hallway and his hand grazed my back. When he walked around shirtless in the mornings, he'd wander around like it was nothing. Yawning, stretching, moving with this careless ease that made it hard not to notice. Sometimes he'd perch on the arm of the couch while I sat there, his knee brushing my shoulder just enough to make my skin buzz. None of it meant anything. That's what I told myself over and over. He was straight. Always had been. The kind of guy who dated girls, sometimes two at once if family gossip was to be believed. Still, something in the air had shifted. Not loud or obvious, but quiet, like a hum beneath every moment. It showed up in small things. Like the time he walked into my room without knocking. "Sorry," he said, freezing when he saw me shirtless, hunched over my laptop. "Didn't know you were studying." But he didn't leave. He just leaned against the doorframe, half smiling, watching me like he knew exactly how uneasy I felt. "You been working out?" he asked suddenly. I blinked. "Not really." "Could have fooled me," he said, and then walked off, leaving me staring at the screen, heart pounding, pretending to focus. I didn't get much studying done after that. What messed with me most was the uncertainty. I couldn't tell if he was just being his usual self, charming, teasing, knowing exactly where the line was, or if there was something else beneath it. Because this didn't feel like a performance, it felt real. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, headphones in, trying to drown out my thoughts. Through the wall, I could hear his soft, even breathing. I closed my eyes, but his image kept slipping in, the way his shoulders curved when he stepped out of the bathroom, towel slung low on his hips. The way he'd call me man, but look at me like he meant something else. The way my skin reacted every time he was near. I hated how aware of him I'd become. The next morning, he was already in the kitchen, shirtless again, sweatpants hanging low on his hips. He looked up from his cereal and grinned. "Sleep okay?" he asked. I nodded, keeping my eyes on the kettle. "Yeah," he stretched, arms overhead, muscles flexing effortlessly. Then casually he said, "I think I had a dream about you." I froze. "What?" he laughed. "Relax, dude. You were just there. Don't even remember what it was about." I didn't reply. My face was already burning and he knew it. He didn't push. Just went back to eating like he hadn't just set my entire morning on fire, and I just stood there, wondering what I'd gotten myself into. Because this wasn't just Alex staying over anymore. This was something else. Something I wasn't ready for. The house felt smaller with him in it. Not physically, but in a way that made every hallway feel tighter, every silence heavier. My room had always been my escape, my quiet space. But now, every inch of it carried his shadow. It started with something small, like the Wi-Fi. "Dude, the signal in the guest room sucks," Alex complained one night, dropping onto my bed without hesitation. "Yours is closer to the router. Mind if I crash?" That night, he didn't wait for an answer. He grabbed one of my pillows, tucked it under his arm, and leaned back like the bed already belonged to him. I stood there awkwardly, gripping my water bottle. "Don't you want your space?" I asked, trying to sound casual, but my voice cracked. He barely looked up from his phone. "You're quieter than I remember. It's chill." That night, he stayed in my room. And the night after that, his excuse? Bad Wi-Fi. Somehow, that was enough reason for him to squeeze into my already too small bed, acting like it was no big deal. At first, I convinced myself it was temporary, just Alex being Alex. But then his things started creeping in. His gym bag open by my desk, his hoodie tossed over my chair, his toothbrush wedged next to mine in the bathroom cup, like it had always belonged there. And that's when the closeness stopped feeling accidental. Alex had always been comfortable in his own skin, but now, there was something different about him. He moved around the house with an effortless ease, towel tossed over his shoulder after showers, hair still damp, stretching like it was part of his routine, arms reaching overhead, muscles flexing beneath smooth skin, always in my line of sight. One afternoon, I was lying on my bed with a book, pretending to read. Alex sat at the foot of the bed, scrolling through his phone. At some point, he stretched his legs and his foot brushed mine just slightly. Skin to skin, I froze. He didn't move, didn't pull away, didn't even glance up. And I couldn't tell if it was deliberate or accidental, but it made my chest tighten and my stomach twist. I wanted to move, break the moment, but I stayed still, hoping he wouldn't notice my racing heart. That night, I tossed and turned in bed, tangled in the sheets, mind buzzing with thoughts of him. Nothing inappropriate, just intense. His presence, the sound of his breathing through the wall, the way he moved around the room earlier. I woke up dazed, heart still pounding, and he was already asleep beside me, calm and peaceful, one arm draped across the pillow. For a moment, I just watched him. Something heavy and unspoken stirred in my chest. Quietly, I slipped out of bed and went to the kitchen, chasing cold water and fresh air to clear my head. But 15 minutes later, he appeared, barefoot, hair still messy, leaning casually against the counter. "Why are you up so early?" he asked, voice rough from sleep. "Couldn't sleep," I mumbled, fumbling with the coffee machine, trying not to show how unsettled I felt. He reached above me for a mug, brushing past my back. It was just a second, but it left a strange warmth lingering in me. He poured coffee, took a sip, and muttered, "Still bitter." "That's because you drown yours in sugar," I replied evenly. He grinned. "That's not how bitterness works. It's perfect for you." "You're such a weirdo." He nudged my shoulder lightly, laughing. I tried not to let it show how much I enjoyed the interaction, or how close he still seemed. That evening, he walked into my room, laptop under one arm, a bag of chips in the other. He didn't ask, just flopped onto my bed. "Movie night," he announced. "Let me guess. You're watching something depressing again, right?" "It's not depressing," I said, sitting up as he opened his screen. It's subtle, he said with a mock-serious nod. Right. Subtle. So subtle everyone cries emotionally, I teased. Despite myself, I laughed. Fine, we can watch something else. No, it's okay. I like your taste. It's different. Good. Different, I murmured, and it landed heavier than it should have. We watched the film anyway, a slow, artsy indie movie I'd been saving. He didn't say much, just leaned back halfway through and pulled the blanket over both of us. Our shoulders touched, our legs brushed lightly, and every tiny movement felt magnified. When the credits rolled, neither of us moved. That was better than I expected, Alex said quietly. He stayed close, voice soft. Are you always this quiet? I asked. Only around people who take up all the space, he smirked, not offended. You mean charming people? Sure, he said. Let's go with that. He chuckled, arms behind his head. I'm sleeping here again, I figured. I replied softly, noticing the room already felt smaller, more intimate. He didn't seem to notice that I stayed awake long after he drifted off. I lay there, eyes on the ceiling fan slowly spinning above, trying to calm my thoughts. Something was happening, and I knew things were about to change. Something quiet but impossible to ignore had settled in between us. I didn't know what it meant or if it was real, but the feeling pressing against my chest wouldn't go away. It wasn't just Alex being here, it was him. And no matter how much I tried to downplay it, I was starting to notice it more than I expected. Our days began to fall into a new rhythm. Alex and I drifted through the house as if some invisible gravity pulled us into the same rooms, the same pauses, the same silences. I'd wake up to find him still in the living room, sometimes reading, sometimes sprawled on the couch. And we acted like it wasn't unusual, but it was starting to feel like a habit, a quiet, unspoken choice we were both making. We didn't speak about it directly, but the silence said everything. It lived in the brush of his arm against mine, in glances that lingered, in the small hesitations before we moved away from each other. Then, on Thursday night, something shifted again. We were sitting on the floor in my room, backs resting against the bed, empty dinner plates forgotten on the rug between us. Alex had just finished retelling a story about his football coach almost driving the team van into a ditch, complete with exaggerated gestures and terrible sound effects. I laughed harder than I had in weeks and leaned against him without thinking. My shoulder pressed into his. He didn't move. When the laughter faded, he stayed there, close, warm, quiet. I could hear the rhythm of his breathing slow beside me. Then he spoke, just above a whisper. You've changed. The words caught me off guard. What? He turned slightly, eyes soft in the glow of the desk lamp. Since we were kids? You're different now. I mean that in a good way. I didn't know how to respond, so I reached for the leftover chips and pretended I was still hungry. But his gaze didn't leave me. It lingered, like a question he wasn't sure he wanted answered, waiting for me to decide. Instead of replying directly, I asked, Why do you really like hanging out in here? He blinked, pausing. What do you mean? I shrugged, eyes on the crumpled chip bag. The Wi-Fi excuse? It's not like the guest room's that far from the router. He went quiet for a moment, then said softly, I don't know. I guess it just feels better here. Calmer, less noise in my head, that stopped me. I looked at him. Really looked. For all his easy charm, all the jokes and confidence, there was something else in his voice now. Something honest. Something real. Do you ever feel like you're always performing? He asked suddenly. Like there's this version of you people expect to see, and if you slip, they start asking questions. His words hit me hard. Not because I didn't understand, but because I did. Yeah, I said quietly. All the time. He looked down, thoughtful. I don't feel that around you. Not even when it's quiet. Even when you look at me like you're trying to figure me out. Maybe I am, I admitted softly. And if you do? What then? I didn't answer right away. The truth was I didn't know. I didn't know what I'd do if I let myself fully notice what was happening between us. So I gave him the only truth I could. Then maybe we stop pretending we don't already feel something. The words hung there, fragile but undeniable. He looked at me, eyes soft and distant, thoughtful. Then he reached out and brushed the back of his hand against mine. A simple gesture, almost nothing, but it made my breath catch. I didn't pull away. Neither did he. We stayed like that for a long time, hands almost touching, the weight of unspoken things filling the room. No one moved. No one needed to. The closeness said it all. Eventually, he leaned his head back against the bed frame and closed his eyes. "I'm tired," he said softly. "Then rest here?" I asked. He nodded. "Yeah, here." Later, when I settled in beside him, we didn't talk. He lay on his side, back turned, and I stared at the ceiling, counting each breath, wondering how many more of these quiet, charged moments we could stretch before something finally shifted. Because it wasn't about what we said. It was about everything we didn't. And that silence was growing louder with every passing second. The next day, something completely unexpected happened. I thought he'd be out for the night. Earlier, Alex had mentioned a late gym session and maybe hanging out with his friend Adrian afterward. "Don't wait up," he'd said casually, slipping his hoodie over his head and flashing that familiar crooked grin before heading out. So, I settled in, finally feeling like I had the house to myself. For the first time in days, it was quiet. Really quiet. No background music, no distant footsteps, no sarcastic jokes echoing from the kitchen. Just stillness. It felt good, like I could finally breathe. I curled up on my bed, dimmed the lights, and let myself just exist for a while. I scrolled through my phone, half listening to a moody playlist, letting the silence settle around me. My thoughts drifted, unburdened, free. Then I heard the faint jingle of keys. At first I ignored it, thinking it was a neighbor or maybe the wind rattling the knob. But then the door creaked, and there he was. Alex stood in the doorway, holding the knob, pausing as if unsure whether to step in. Neither of us moved at first. The silence was thick, almost heavy. My chest tightened, my heart raced, not from fear, but from the shock of seeing him there, unannounced. "You said you weren't coming back tonight," I said, voice shaking slightly. He froze, eyes wide, clearly caught off guard. The gym was closed. Adrian flaked. "I texted you," he admitted softly, voice uneven. I studied him, trying to read his expression, confused, concerned, or maybe amused. But what I saw wasn't any of those things. His gaze lingered on me, curious, like he wanted to understand something without needing words. "I should have knocked," he said quietly, stepping in slowly, his expression softer this time. "It's fine," I replied instinctively. The house felt smaller in that moment. The air charged in a way it hadn't been before. Something unspoken hovered between us, an awareness, a connection, a quiet tension neither of us wanted to break. Alex moved further in, closing the door gently behind him. Neither of us spoke. The room felt intimate in a way that had nothing to do with space and everything to do with presence. We stayed there, caught in the stillness, the subtle acknowledgement of something shifting between us. And just like that, the rhythm of the house, of our days, of us, had changed. My voice was steadier now, but low. "Just don't make it weird." He let out a nervous breath, half a laugh. Too late for that. He lingered near the doorway, then slowly stepped into the room, stopping at the edge of the bed. I could feel the weight of his eyes as they flicked to me, then back to my face. There was something in his expression I couldn't name. "I didn't mean to," he started, then paused, running a hand through his hair. "You just looked peaceful." I blinked. "What?" "Before you noticed me," he said, voice quiet, "you were just here, like you could finally relax." Not pretending. I swallowed hard. That wasn't the kind of thing people usually noticed or said. He sat slowly at the foot of the bed, leaving space between us. I felt the mattress dip beneath him. We were both quiet. Then he spoke again, voice low. "Do you do this sometimes? Just sit and relax when you think no one's around?" I admitted it quietly. "Yeah, sometimes." He nodded, staring ahead, lost in thought. "You didn't seem embarrassed," I laughed weakly. "Trust me, I am." No, he said gently. You didn't try to disappear. You just looked surprised. I didn't know how to answer. Maybe part of me hadn't panicked yet. Maybe some small part wanted him to see me. We sat in silence, then he shifted a little closer. I'm not going to lie, he said quietly. It's okay, I whispered. He looked down, then back at me. Not in a bad way, just differently. My breath caught. His hand rested on the bed nearby, close enough that I could feel the energy between us. He met my eyes, and this time his gaze didn't falter. I like seeing you like this, he said softly. Calm, real. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The weight of unspoken words filled the room. Finally, I asked, Do you want to sit closer? He nodded, and we moved slightly together, careful, hesitant, yet natural. The air between us was electric, a quiet understanding passing without a single word. We didn't need to talk, we just existed in the same space, letting the moment unfold. The room felt smaller, warmer, somehow different. He leaned back against the bed frame, letting out a soft sigh. I'm glad I stayed, he murmured. Me too, I whispered, and just like that, the silence wasn't empty anymore. It was full of connection, understanding, and the kind of closeness that didn't need anything else. When he looked at me, something in his gaze made my chest tighten. You look different, he said quietly. I didn't know how to respond. I just let him sit closer, slower this time, as if testing the space between us. I could feel the energy of his presence, steady and warm. We moved together naturally, like people who had been waiting to connect, but without rushing. His hand brushed mine, light and careful. I let my own hand follow, learning the shape of the moment, the rhythm of him. He leaned closer, forehead nearly touching mine. I don't know what this means, he whispered. I don't care, I said softly. After that, words weren't necessary. We just existed side by side, letting the quiet speak. The outside world, the rules, the distractions, they didn't matter. Only this moment did. Later, sitting side by side, he rested his head near mine, one arm loosely around me. He was quiet, almost asleep, but still present. You okay? He mumbled. I nodded, running a hand over his shoulder. Yeah, you? He smiled softly, a gentle warmth in his expression. No need to define anything yet. We weren't pretending anymore, and that was enough. Morning came slowly, sunlight stretching across the floor. For a moment I forgot where I was, then glanced at him. He was still there, calm, relaxed, not guarded, not trying to impress, just himself. I watched him, memorizing the small details, the tilt of his head, the soft line of his jaw, the quiet expression on his face. Eventually, I shifted slightly, and he stirred. His eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the light, and then he saw me. For a second, nothing was said. Then he smiled, warm and slow, like everything about being here was natural. Hey, he said softly. Hey, I whispered back. He stretched, letting his hand rest near mine. What time is it? No idea, I murmured. He didn't move. He just stayed there, calm and present. I had the strangest dream, he said after a moment. Was I in it? I asked. He looked at me and grinned. You were. My stomach flipped. Not because of the words, but because of how gentle he said them, like he wasn't afraid anymore, like nothing between us had changed. I wanted to ask 100 things, what this meant, if it mattered, but instead I asked the simplest, Are you okay? He didn't answer right away. He shifted a little, still keeping his hand near mine, as if neither of us wanted to break the quiet connection we'd built. He looked at me, calm but thoughtful. I am, he said, but I keep waiting for the part where it gets complicated. It might, I admitted. He nodded slowly, his expression soft. I know, but right now it doesn't feel complicated. It feels right. That word, right, hit harder than anything else because that's exactly what it was. Not sudden, not confusing, just inevitable. He sat up, swinging his legs over the side of the bed and rubbing his face with both hands. The morning light traced the curve of his shoulders and his whole body seemed to exhale. "You're not freaking out?" I asked quietly. He turned halfway toward me. "Should I be?" I shrugged. "I don't know. I thought maybe you'd wake up and say it was a mistake." He paused, then shook his head. "It wasn't a mistake. Not even close." Relief settled deep inside me, quiet but steady. Still, questions lingered, the kind that could ruin a moment if spoken too soon. So I tried to keep it simple. "What now?" I asked. He smiled again, softer this time. "One step at a time," I nodded. It wasn't a promise, but it was something. And right then, something was enough. That morning, we moved around the kitchen like always, but everything felt different. Our hands brushed when we reached for mugs. He leaned into my shoulder as he passed by. The silence didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt full, charged with quiet understanding. At one point, he looked at me over the rim of his coffee cup and said, "You know, this place felt cold when I first got here, but now," he tilted his head, eyes finding mine, "now it feels like somewhere I don't want to leave." I couldn't say what I really felt, so I just smiled and stared into my cereal like it could hide the truth. That afternoon, he left his bag by the door, the same one he'd meant to pack, but he didn't touch it. "You're staying?" I asked, trying not to sound too eager. He rubbed the back of his neck, a shy smile forming. "If you'll have me," I bit back a grin and nodded. "Yeah, I'll have you." He stepped closer, leaned down, and kissed me softly. No rush, no heat. Just a quiet moment that said I'm still here. That night, we didn't label what we were. We didn't need to. When he climbed into bed beside me, pulling the blanket over both of us, his forehead rested against mine. For once, I didn't need answers. I just needed this, and for the first time I wasn't scared, because he wasn't running and neither was I. What now? Where do we go from here? If we keep walking this path, how do we face a world that won't understand? I don't know. But one thing is certain. We can't take back what's already happened. And maybe we don't want to. What would you do if you were in our place? Would you walk away before it gets harder, or would you take the risk and keep going down this uncertain path? Tell me what you'd choose in the comments, because right now, I'm too lost to know the answer myself.